That night, a feared millionaire sat alone in a ballroom full of light. A man everyone avoided, a man people whispered about. And then 3 little girls walked up to him, holding their entire life savings, $5.37. "Sir," they said, looking straight into his eyes, "can you pretend to be our dad, just for tonight?" He thought it was a small favor. He didn't know that promise would change his life, forever. If stories about love, sacrifice, and the power of family touch your heart, take a moment to subscribe. There's a new story here waiting for you every day. The music was soft. Warm lights shimmered across crystal glasses. Laughter floated through the grand ballroom like it belonged to another world. But Tristan Blackwood sat alone. At a VIP table in the far corner, the richest man in the room looked like he didn't belong there at all. The whiskey in front of him hadn't been touched for over an hour. This was his younger brother's engagement party. A celebration. A night of joy. Connor was on the dance floor, smiling, spinning his fiancée under golden lights. But Tristan couldn't feel any of it. 4 years. 4 years since the night his wife, Meredith, died in his arms. The doctors had called it a tragedy. The police had called it an accident. But Tristan knew the truth. The world he lived in, the world of power, money, and dangerous enemies, had taken her from him. Even now, in a room full of music, he could still smell blood. Still hear her last whisper, "I love you." His hand moved unconsciously to the faint scar along his jaw. The only mark that night had left on his body. The rest of the damage was somewhere deeper. He should leave. No one would question it. He'd already congratulated his brother. Signed a very generous gift check. Shaken hands. Smiled when required. Connor would understand. Connor always understood. Tristan reached for his phone to call his driver. And that's when he heard a small voice. "Are you a bad man?" He froze. Slowly, Tristan lifted his head. 3 little girls stood in front of his table. They looked identical. Same brown curls, same clear green eyes, same serious expressions that didn't belong on 6-year-old faces. Their dresses were simple. Clean but worn. The kind of clothes that had been washed many times and handed down carefully. Their shoes were scuffed at the edges. These were not children from wealthy families. And yet they were looking straight at him. Not afraid. Curious. "Why do you ask?" Tristan said, his voice quieter than he expected. The smallest one tilted her head. "Because you look scary," she said honestly. "But our mom says you shouldn't judge people by how they look." Another girl stepped forward. "You don't look mean," she added softly. "You look sad." The third girl nodded. "Our mom looks like that too sometimes. She works a lot. She gets tired." Something in Tristan's chest tightened. He hadn't smiled in years. But now, just a little, the corner of his mouth moved. "And what are your names?" he asked. "I'm Ellie. I'm Daisy. And I'm Molly." They glanced at each other, the quiet, silent communication only siblings seemed to understand. Then all 3 leaned closer. Their voices dropped to a whisper. "Can you help our mom?" Tristan blinked. "With what?" "Our boss is yelling at her," Ellie said quickly. "She works here. She's a server." "She spilled a little sauce," Daisy added. "He's yelling really loud," Molly whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "Mom never cries in front of us. But we saw her eyes in the bathroom. She cried alone." The anger came fast. It always did. But this time it wasn't business. It wasn't about power or money. It was for 3 little girls standing in front of him, trying to be brave. "Why me?" Tristan asked. "There are hundreds of adults here." The girls looked at each other again. Then Molly answered. Because you look like someone who can make people scared. She swallowed. But you don't scare us. Ellie nodded. So you must be a good man pretending to be a bad one. Daisy finished quietly. Our mom needs someone good. But she also needs someone scary. You're both. For a moment, Tristan couldn't speak. No one had ever seen him that clearly. Not in years. Where is your mom? He finally asked. 3 small hands lifted at once, pointing toward the service hallway. Tristan followed their gaze. A thin woman in a black and white server uniform stood near the kitchen doors. Her shoulders were straight. Her hands were clenched tight. And a heavy-set manager was shouting directly in her face. She didn't argue. Didn't cry. Didn't beg. She just stood there. Enduring. That's our mom, Ellie whispered. Her name is Bryn. She works 3 jobs, Daisy added quietly. Molly's voice shook. Some bad men come to our house too. They bang on the door. Mom tells us to hide in the closet. Tristan's expression changed. What bad men? He asked. Ellie frowned, trying to remember. Mom calls them Mr. Moretti's people. The name hit Tristan like ice. Moretti. The man responsible for the attack 4 years ago. The man connected to Meredith's death. And now his people were threatening a poor single mother and her children. Cold anger settled deep inside Tristan. Not loud. Not explosive. Just dangerous. He stood slowly. I'll help your mom, he said. The girl's eyes widened. Really? Daisy asked. Yes. He adjusted his suit jacket. Stay here. Don't move. As he turned to go, Molly suddenly grabbed his hand. Her small fingers were warm. You won't scare her, right? She asked. Tristan looked down at her. I promise. She nodded and let go. Then, just as he took his first step away, Ellie called out. Wait. Molly dug into her pocket. She counted carefully. Then held out a few crumpled bills and some coins. Our money, she said seriously. $5.37. All our savings, Daisy added. Ellie looked him straight in the eye. To pay you. Tristan stared at the money in her small hands. Everything those 3 girls owned. His throat tightened. Keep it, he said quietly. Molly shook her head. If we pay you, you have to keep your promise. Tristan hesitated. Then he closed his hand gently over the money, and turned toward the hallway. He had walked into that party as a man with nothing left to feel. But as he stepped toward the woman being humiliated, and thought about the 3 girls watching him with hope, for the first time in 4 years, Tristan Blackwood wasn't walking to destroy someone. He was walking to protect someone. And he had no idea. This was the moment his life would begin again. Behind him, the 3 sisters held hands and whispered, Do you think he can help? Molly asked. Ellie watched the tall man disappear into the hallway. He promised, she said. Daisy swallowed. How do you know he'll keep it? Ellie's voice was quiet. Because he looked at Mom, the same way Mom looks at us. And just beyond the kitchen doors, Tristan Blackwood was about to step into a fight that would pull him back into a past he had never finished with. And this time, it wasn't business. It was personal. The hallway grew quieter with every step he took. The music from the ballroom faded behind him, replaced by the sharp clatter of dishes, the hum of kitchen equipment, and the strained sound of a man's raised voice echoing near the service doors. Do you have any idea who is out there? The manager barked. This is a private event for the city's most important people. And you embarrass us over a stupid mistake? Tristan stopped a few feet away. The woman stood exactly as he had seen her from across the room. Thin. Tired. but upright. Her hands were clenched at her sides, knuckles white, as the heavy man leaned toward her, his face flushed with anger. "I'm docking your pay for this week," he continued. "No, 2 weeks. Maybe that'll teach you to pay attention." She didn't argue. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm. "I understand." There was no begging in it. No self-pity. Just quiet endurance. Tristan recognized that tone. It was the sound of someone who had already survived too much to waste energy fighting small battles. "What's the problem here?" His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a blade. The manager turned sharply, irritation already forming on his face, until he saw who was standing there. The color drained from him instantly. Mr. Blackwood. Tristan didn't look at him. His eyes were on the woman. Up close, he could see the details the distance had hidden. There were faint shadows under her eyes. Her uniform was neatly pressed, but worn at the sleeves. And there was a strength in the way she held herself, not pride, not defiance. Dignity. "She works for me now," Tristan said. The manager blinked. "I'm sorry, sir, but she's an employee of the venue and—" "I didn't ask." That was when Tristan looked at him. Just one glance. Cold. Come. Certain. The manager swallowed. "Yes, sir." He stepped back immediately, then turned and hurried down the hallway without another word. Silence settled. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The woman studied Tristan carefully, her eyes sharp, cautious, not frightened, just alert. That surprised him. Most people showed fear the second they recognized him. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She blinked, clearly not expecting that question. "No." "Good." He nodded slightly toward the ballroom. "Your daughters are waiting." Her expression changed instantly. The tension in her face softened, just for a second. She moved past him quickly, almost running. Tristan followed a few steps behind. The 3 girls were already climbing down from their chairs when they saw her. "Mom!" They rushed forward, wrapping their arms around her at the same time. She dropped to her knees, pulling them close, checking their faces, their hands, their hair, as if she needed to be sure they were really there. "I'm fine," she whispered. "I'm okay." Then she looked up. At Tristan. "Who are you?" "Tristan Blackwood." There was no reaction. No surprise. Either she didn't know his name, or it didn't matter to her. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Tristan pulled out a chair and sat across from them. "Because of Moretti." This time, she went still. Her arms tightened around the girls just slightly. "You know them." "They killed my wife," Tristan said evenly. 4 years ago." The woman's eyes searched his face, reading him. "You're their enemy," she said quietly. He nodded. "How much do you owe them?" She hesitated. The girls were listening now, very still. Finally, she exhaled. $47,000. The number hung heavy in the air. "Your husband?" Tristan asked. "He left," she said. No anger in her voice. Just fact. When the girls were 8 months old. Gambling debts. Loans. Then he disappeared. She brushed a hand gently over Molly's hair. "I've been paying it off for 6 years. But the interest keeps growing." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "They gave me 30 days. 30 days for a woman working 3 jobs. 30 days for a mother who skipped meals so her children could eat." Tristan looked at the girls. 6 years old. Already familiar with fear. "What happens if you don't pay?" he asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The way she pulled them closer told him everything. "I'll pay the debt," Tristan said. Her head lifted sharply. "No. You didn't hear the conditions. I don't need to. Her voice was firm now. I don't take charity. And I don't sell myself. Tristan leaned forward. This isn't charity. Every debt they lose hurts Moretti. You're just one more cut. She studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I respect the honesty. So you agree? No. She stood, taking the girl's hands. I won't trade one devil for another. The words were calm, clear, and final. She turned and began to walk away. Not hurried. Not desperate. Straight-backed. Dignified. Like a woman leaving with the only thing she still owned, her self-respect. Tristan watched her go. And for the first time in years, he felt something close to admiration. As she passed him, he slipped a black business card into the pocket of her uniform. Quick. Silent. She didn't notice. The girls followed her toward the exit. But halfway there, Molly stopped. She looked back at Tristan, then at her mother, then back again. She made a decision. Molly ran back to him. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the crumpled bills and coins, counted quickly, and pressed them into his hand. I know Mom said no, she whispered seriously. She always says no. Her eyes shone. But if she changes her mind, we already hired you. She closed his fingers over the money. You have to keep your promise. Then she turned and ran after her family. Tristan stood there, alone in the ballroom. In his hand were 5 wrinkled $37, the smallest payment he had ever received. And somehow, the heaviest. Across the room, he watched the 4 figures disappear through the doors. A tired single mother. 3 little girls holding her hands. And something told him this wasn't over. Not even close. Because for the first time in 4 years, someone had trusted him with everything they had. And that night, long after the party ended, in a small apartment across the city, that black card would be lying in a tired mother's hand. And she would be staring at it, as someone began pounding on her door. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Bryn sat at the small table near the window, the only light coming from a weak lamp that flickered every few minutes like it was tired of working. The room was barely big enough for 4 people, but everything inside it was clean, careful, organized with the kind of effort that came from living on the edge, where replacing anything broken wasn't an option. On the bed behind her, the 3 girls slept close together, curled like kittens under one thin blanket. Molly held her worn teddy bear against her chest. Ellie's arm was wrapped protectively around her sister's, even in sleep. Bryn watched them for a long moment. Then she looked down at her hand. The black card rested in her palm. Simple. Heavy. Expensive. No name. Just a number. She hadn't even realized it was in her pocket until she came home and took off her uniform. $47,000. 30 days. 3 jobs. It didn't add up. It never had. For 6 years she had fought like her life depended on it. Worked mornings at the grocery store. Afternoons at the restaurant. Cleaned offices late at night. Skipped meals. Sold jewelry. Sold furniture. Sold anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. But debt like that didn't shrink. It waited. It grew. And it always came back. A sudden, violent pounding on the door shattered the silence. Not a knock. A pounding. Hard enough to shake the thin wood. Bryn stood up instantly. On the bed, the girls' eyes opened at the same time. They didn't cry. They didn't ask questions. They already knew. Bryn didn't speak. She just nodded once. The 3 girls slid off the bed without a sound and moved quickly to the old wardrobe in the corner. They climbed inside and pulled the door almost closed, leaving only a narrow gap to breathe. They had done this before. Too many times. Bryn swallowed hard and walked toward the door. The pounding came again. Open up. She unlocked it slowly. Two men stood in the hallway. Big, heavy, cold faces. One of them she recognized. He'd come before. Always smiling. Always polite. Tonight, there was no smile. Evening, he said flatly. Bryn didn't answer. The boss asked us to remind you, he continued. 30 days. I know. Her voice was steady. I'll have the money. The second man stepped inside without being invited. His eyes moved slowly around the small apartment. The bed. The drawings on the wall. The tiny table. Then they stopped. On the wardrobe door. There was a thin gap. Bryn's heart slammed against her ribs. Where you gonna get that kind of money? The man asked, laughing under his breath. You work 3 jobs and still can't keep up with interest. The first man grabbed her by the collar and shoved her back against the wall. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. Boss says if there's no money, he whispered near her ear, his breath thick with cigarette smoke, we take something else. His eyes shifted again. Toward the wardrobe. Inside, Molly stopped breathing. Ellie pulled her sisters closer. Daisy pressed her hands over her mouth. I'll have the money, Bryn said. Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't move. That's my problem. Now get out of my home. For a second, the men stared at her. Then they laughed. The sound filled the tiny room like something ugly and heavy. They released her, turned, and walked out. The door slammed behind them. Bryn didn't move. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then she ran to the wardrobe and pulled the door open. 3 small bodies flew into her arms. Mom! Molly's voice broke. Are they going to take us? Never, Bryn whispered, holding them tight. Never. I promise. But as she said it, she knew something terrible. A promise wasn't enough. A promise didn't stop men like that. That night, after the girls fell asleep again, Bryn sat by the window in the dark. The black card was still in her hand. She stared at it for a long time. Her pride had kept her alive for 6 years. Her strength. Her independence. But pride didn't protect children. Pride didn't stop men from looking at a wardrobe like it was inventory. 2 in the morning. Her hand was shaking when she picked up her phone. She dialed the number. It rang once. Twice. Then a voice answered. Blackwood. He sounded awake. Like he had been expecting the call. Bryn didn't speak at first. Her throat felt tight. Finally, her voice came out, rough and quiet. I hate you for being right. There was a short silence. Then his answer came, calm and steady. Come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring your daughters. Why do they need to come? Because from now on, he said, no one in your household goes anywhere without protection. The next morning, Bryn stood in front of a building that didn't look real. Glass and steel rising into the sky. Clean. Perfect. Powerful. She held Molly's hand on one side. Daisy's on the other. Ellie stood close beside her. People in expensive suits walked past them without slowing down. The girls stayed quiet. Their eyes were wide. A young assistant approached them, looking confused. Can I help you? Before Bryn could answer, a familiar voice came from behind him. She's with me. Tristan stepped out from the elevator area, dressed in a black suit that looked like it had never known a wrinkle. His expression didn't change. But when Molly saw him, she smiled. Connor, standing nearby, blinked in surprise. Bring them up, Tristan said. The office on the top floor was larger than Bryn's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Polished surfaces. Everything expensive. Everything cold. Tristan sat behind his desk and slid a folder toward her. It's done. Bryn frowned. What is? Your debt. Paid in full. Her hands froze. You paid it already? Yes. I didn't agree yet. You didn't have time, he said calmly. Moretti knew you were connected to me the moment I stepped in last night. They weren't going to wait 30 days. Bryn opened the folder. $47,000. Cleared. 6 years of fear. Gone overnight. Her hands began to tremble. Not from fear. From relief so sharp it almost hurt. What do I owe you? She asked quietly. Tristan looked at her for a long moment. I don't know yet. I need to know. His voice lowered. When I decide, you'll know. But it won't be something you can't give. Before she could respond, laughter filled the room. Bryn turned. Ellie had found a stack of sticky notes and was drawing on them. Daisy was putting cat stickers on a leather briefcase. And Molly. Molly was spinning in Tristan's chair like it was the best ride in the world. This office is sad, Daisy announced. It needs color, Ellie agreed. Tristan watched them. Not angry. Not annoyed. Just quiet. Like he didn't know what to do with something so bright inside a life that had been dark for a very long time. Then he looked back at Bryn. From now on, he said, you're under my protection. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a slim silver bracelet. He fastened it around her wrist. It has a tracker. If you're ever in danger, press the button. Bryn looked at the bracelet, then at him. And you'll come? Tristan held her gaze. No matter where you are. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside the window, the city moved like nothing had changed. But inside that office, everything had. Because somewhere across Chicago, someone had just received news that a poor single mother no longer belonged to them. And men like Moretti didn't forget losses. They answered them. For a few days, life tried to feel normal again. Bryn went back to work. The girls went to school. Morning routines returned. Packing lunches, tying shoelaces, checking backpacks twice because Molly always forgot something. But something inside Bryn had changed. The bracelet on her wrist felt heavier than it looked. Not because of the metal. Because of what it meant. Protection. Safety. And a quiet reminder that her life was no longer entirely her own. At night, when the apartment finally went quiet, she would catch herself touching it, pressing her thumb lightly over the small button in the center. Just to feel where it was. Just to know someone fearsome, powerful, and dangerous had promised to come if she ever needed him. Across the city, Tristan was learning something new, too. He wasn't used to worrying about school schedules, or grocery store shifts, or whether 3 little girls made it safely across a street. But now, every morning, his security team sent him a brief report. Bryn, grocery store, 8 a.m. Girls, school, 8:30 a.m. Restaurant shift, 4 p.m. Home, 9:15 p.m. Routine. Predictable. Safe. That word mattered more than anything. Until the message arrived. Tristan was standing by the window in his office when his phone vibrated. Connor noticed the change immediately. Tristan didn't move. Didn't speak. He was just staring at the screen. Connor stepped closer. What is it? Tristan turned the phone toward him. It was a photo. Bryn walking the girls across the street toward their school. Ellie holding Molly's hand. Daisy carrying a backpack almost too big for her shoulders. The picture had been taken from inside a car. Close. Too close. Below the image was a message. She belonged to us first. You think paying makes this over? Connor's face went pale. Moretti. The air in the room changed. Tristan didn't slam his phone, didn't curse, didn't raise his voice. The calm was worse. When he spoke, his tone was flat. Call her. 20 minutes later, Bryn stood in front of his desk. She could see something was wrong immediately. What happened? Tristan slid the phone toward her. She looked at the picture. The color drained from her face. They were watching us? They still are. Her hand tightened around the phone. They don't have the debt anymore. Why would they? Because this isn't about money anymore, Tristan said quietly. It's about control. He stood. You and the girls are moving into my house. Bryn blinked. What? Today? No. The answer came instantly. Her voice shook, but her eyes were firm. I can't move my children into a stranger's home. They need stability. They need normal. Tristan stepped closer. They took this picture from a car outside your daughter's school. They know your schedule. They know your routine. Bryn swallowed. This isn't the life I want for them. Life or death, Tristan said. Choose. The words hung between them. Cold. Brutal. True. That afternoon, a black car pulled up outside Bryn's building. The girls watched silently as their small apartment grew smaller through the window. Molly pressed her face to the glass. Are we moving forever? Bryn didn't answer right away. I don't know, she said softly. The Blackwood estate stood at the end of a long private road. Tall iron gates opened slowly as the car approached. The girls fell quiet. The house appeared after a long curve through tall oak trees. Huge. Stone walls. Tall windows. Perfect lawns trimmed so precisely they didn't look real. But something about it felt cold. Like a place people stayed in. Not lived in. Inside, the silence felt even heavier. No family photos. No decorations. Everything clean. Expensive. Empty. This house is sad, Molly whispered. Daisy held her mother's hand tighter. It feels like a museum. Ellie looked around slowly, studying everything the way she always did. Then she looked up at Bryn. Is it sad because Uncle Tristan is sad? Bryn didn't answer. But she understood. This wasn't a home. It was a place where a man came to sleep. To hide. To exist. Tristan appeared at the top of the stairs. Your rooms are upstairs, he said. The staff will help you settle in. And then he turned and walked away. Like he didn't know what else to do. Like he didn't know how to live with people instead of protecting them from a distance. That first night, the girls slept together in one large bed, even though each of them had their own. The house was too big. Too quiet. Too unfamiliar. Bryn sat beside them until they fell asleep. Later, as she walked down the hallway, she noticed something. A door slightly open. Light inside. She hesitated. Then she knocked softly. Come in, Tristan's voice said. He was sitting at a large desk, paperwork spread in front of him. He looked up. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Bryn said quietly, Thank you. For what? For keeping them safe. He studied her face. You don't trust me. It wasn't a question. She didn't lie. I don't know you. That's fair. There was a long silence. Then he asked, Are they scared? A little. He nodded once. I'll increase security around the property. Bryn hesitated. That's not what they need. Tristan looked up again. What do they need? She gave a small, tired smile. They need the lights on in the hallway at night. That answer seemed to surprise him. I'll make sure it's done, he said. Bryn turned to leave. But before she stepped out, she paused. They don't see you as someone dangerous, she said quietly. "They think you're the man who kept a promise." She left the door open behind her. That night, for the first time in years, the lights stayed on in the long hallway outside the girls' room. And somewhere far across the city, in a dark office filled with smoke and silence, a man looked at the same photo Tristan had received. And this time he smiled. Because if Tristan Blackwood had moved the woman and her daughters into his home, it meant one thing. They were no longer just leverage. They were his weakness. The next morning, the house didn't feel as quiet. It wasn't louder exactly, but it wasn't empty anymore. Tristan noticed it the moment he stepped into the hallway. Something bright was taped to the wall outside his study. He stopped. It was a drawing. 4 stick figures. One tall and dark in a black suit. One with long brown hair. 3 smaller ones holding hands. Above them, written in uneven letters, "Our family." He stood there longer than he expected. Then he opened the door to his study. There were more. A rainbow taped to the bookshelf. A smiling sun on the window. And on his desk, a small purple cat sticker. Jude, one of his senior men, stood nearby looking uncomfortable. "Sir, the children may not understand boundaries." Tristan looked at the sticker, then at the drawings. "Leave them," he said. Jude blinked. "Sir." "I said leave them." Jude nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." Tristan walked toward the kitchen. He stopped in the doorway. Bryn stood at the stove, stirring something slowly. An apron was tied around her waist, one that looked like it had come from their old apartment. The girls sat at the table doing homework, or trying to. Molly was drawing instead. Daisy was arguing with Ellie over a math problem. Warm yellow light filled the room. Not the cold white lights the house usually used. Tristan realized something he hadn't felt here in years. The house smelled like food. Like someone lived here. Molly looked up first. "Uncle Tristan." She ran across the room and hugged his leg before he could react. He froze. Then Daisy and Ellie joined her. 3 small arms wrapped around him. He didn't move. Didn't know where to put his hands. It had been 4 years since anyone had hugged him without hesitation. From the stove, Bryn watched quietly. She didn't step in. Didn't apologize. She just let the moment happen. Slowly, awkwardly, Tristan lowered one hand. Then the other. He rested them lightly on their backs. The girls didn't notice how careful he was. To them, it already felt normal. Dinner that night was loud. The girls talked over each other, telling him about school. About a class pet. About a girl who cheated at recess. About how Molly had been chosen to hand out papers. Tristan didn't talk much. But he listened. And for the first time in years, he finished a meal without realizing he'd eaten it. Later that night, as Bryn washed dishes, the girls cornered him in the living room. "You have to read to us," Ellie said. "I don't read children's books." "You can read," Daisy said. "That's not the same thing." Molly climbed onto the couch and patted the seat next to her. "We'll teach you." 5 minutes later, Tristan Blackwood, a man feared across the city, sat stiffly on a couch holding a princess storybook. "Once upon a time," he read, his voice flat, "there was a princess." The girls stared at him. Then they burst into laughter. "You sound like a robot," Daisy said, holding her stomach. "You have to act," Molly insisted. Tristan cleared his throat. He tried again. Still stiff. Still awkward. But he kept reading. Halfway through the story, the laughter faded. By the last page, all 3 girls were asleep against him. Molly's hand still clutched the edge of his sleeve. Bryn stood in the doorway watching. When he looked up, she smiled. A real one. "Thank you," she whispered. And for a moment, something warm settled quietly between them. The house began changing after that. Small things at first. Toys in the living room. Drawings on the refrigerator. A stuffed bear sitting in Tristan's office chair like it owned the place. The staff moved carefully around the chaos, unsure how to react. But Tristan never told anyone to clean it up. He came home one evening and found Bryn in the kitchen again. The girls had decided he needed to learn how to cook. Ellie handed him a knife. You can't live on takeout forever. He held it like a weapon. Bryn stepped behind him. Not like that, she said gently. Her hands closed over his. Warm. Steady. For a second, neither of them moved. Then she stepped back. Like this. The result was burned garlic, uneven pasta, and a kitchen that looked like a small disaster. The girls laughed until they fell to the floor. Bryn tried not to laugh. Failed. And Tristan found himself smiling. One morning, Bryn woke up with a fever. She tried to get up anyway. Tristan stopped her. I'll call a doctor. It's just a cold. Then stay in bed. But the girls. I'll take them. The girls stood in front of him a few minutes later. Their hair was a mess. Molly looked worried. Mom always braids it. Tristan stared at them. 10 minutes later, he sat in the bathroom with his phone propped up, watching a braiding tutorial. His fingers moved slowly through Molly's hair. Careful. Clumsy. The result looked nothing like the video. Ellie laughed. This isn't a braid. It's a bird's nest. Daisy looked quickly at Tristan. It's special. Molly turned to the mirror, smiling. I'm going to tell everyone my dad did it. The room went still. She didn't seem to notice what she'd said. But Tristan did. He didn't correct her. Didn't speak. He just finished tying the uneven braid. That night, during a meeting with his men, Jude spoke carefully. Sir, I'm concerned. Their presence here creates risk. Moretti could use them to reach you. The room went quiet. Tristan stood slowly. They are not a liability, he said. Jude nodded, but continued. I'm only saying we should be careful. People break under pressure, especially when family is involved. Tristan walked closer. Each step calm. Controlled. If anyone suggests they are a weakness again, he said quietly, they won't be part of this organization anymore. Silence. Jude lowered his eyes. Yes, sir. Outside the meeting room, Bryn stood frozen. She hadn't meant to listen. But she'd heard enough. And for the first time, she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to think before. This man wasn't protecting them out of obligation. He was protecting them because they mattered to him. That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Tristan woke suddenly. Breathing hard. Sweat on his skin. The nightmare again. Blood. Meredith's voice. Her hand slipping away. A small sound came from his doorway. Molly stood there in her pajamas, holding her teddy bear. I heard you yell, she said softly. I'm fine. She didn't leave. She walked over and climbed onto the bed. I have bad dreams too, she said. About the men who come to our door. She placed the teddy bear in his hands. You can borrow him. He keeps the monsters away. Then she curled up beside him like it was the most natural thing in the world. Tristan sat there in the dark, holding a worn teddy bear, listening to the quiet breathing of a child who trusted him completely. For the first time in 4 years, the nightmare didn't come back. But across the estate grounds, near the security gate, a car slowed briefly in the darkness. The driver didn't get out, didn't approach. He just looked toward the house, then drove away. And somewhere, not far from there, Someone was already planning the next move. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm that almost felt like peace. Not the quiet, empty kind Tristan had lived with for years. This was different. Messy peace. Noisy peace. Living peace. The house no longer echoed when someone walked through it. There were always footsteps, voices, something dropped, something forgotten, something being argued about. Drawings multiplied on the walls. Toys appeared in places no one remembered leaving them. The staff had learned to step around dollhouses and scattered crayons without asking questions. And every evening, when Tristan returned home, 3 small figures ran toward the door before anyone else could reach it. Uncle Tristan. They still called him that. But the way they hugged him said something deeper. Bryn watched it every time. The way he bent down now without hesitation. The way his hands no longer hovered awkwardly in the air. The way the girls leaned into him like he had always been there. It was happening slowly. Quietly. But it was real. One evening, after dinner, the girls were in their room arguing over a puzzle when Bryn stepped onto the back balcony. The night air was cool. Chicago lights stretched out in the distance. She thought she was alone. She wasn't. Tristan stood at the railing, looking out over the city. Neither of them spoke at first. Then she said softly, "You can't sleep either?" "Not tonight." The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It had changed into something calmer. Something familiar. After a moment, Bryn asked the question that had been sitting in her mind for weeks. "Why did you really help us?" Tristan didn't answer right away. "You could have hurt Moretti without bringing us into your world," she added. He leaned his hands against the railing. "Because of their eyes." She looked at him. "They looked at me like I could be a good man," he said quietly. "No one's looked at me like that in a long time." The city lights reflected in his eyes. "Your wife?" Bryn asked gently. He nodded once. "She believed in me too." Bryn hesitated. "What happened?" Tristan's voice didn't change. "She died because someone was trying to kill me." The words landed heavily between them. No drama. No anger. Just truth. For a moment, Bryn didn't know what to say. Then she stepped closer. Her hand rested lightly on his arm. "She didn't die because of you," she said softly. "She died because she loved you. That was her choice." Tristan looked down at her hand. No one touched him like that anymore. Not without fear. Not without needing something. He didn't pull away. After a moment, she realized what she'd done and stepped back. "You should try to sleep," she said quietly. She turned to go. Bryn. It was the first time he had said her name without formality. She stopped. "Thank you," he said. She nodded once and went inside. From that night on, something changed between them. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just small things. She would leave a cup of coffee on his desk in the mornings. He would ask about the girls' school instead of reading the report. They started talking in the evenings after the girls went to bed. Sometimes about practical things. Sometimes about nothing at all. And sometimes they would sit in the library without speaking, reading separate books, the quiet between them comfortable instead of empty. One night, Bryn noticed something. "You're staring," she said without looking up. "Maybe." She closed her book slowly. "Why?" There was no hesitation this time. "Because you're beautiful." The words hit her harder than she expected. She stood too quickly. "Don't." Tristan stepped closer. "Don't what?" "Don't say things like that," she said, her voice tight. "I can't afford to think about things like that." "Like what?" She turned to face him. "Like you." The room felt smaller suddenly. "I shouldn't feel anything for you," she continued. "You're dangerous." Your life is dangerous. My girls are finally safe. I can't risk that." Tristan didn't move. "Do you feel something?" he asked quietly. Bryn swallowed. "I don't know what I feel," she said. "I just know that when you come home late, I can't sleep. And when you get hurt, I feel sick. And when you read to them, or braid their hair, I start thinking maybe this could be real." Her voice broke slightly. "And that scares me." Tristan reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. "I thought I stopped living 4 years ago," he said. "You and the girls. You make me want to come home. You make me want to be careful. You make me want to stay alive." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Bryn stepped forward. The distance between them disappeared. The kiss wasn't gentle. It wasn't planned. It was desperate, like two people who had been holding themselves together for too long. When they pulled apart, they stayed close, breathing the same air. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "Maybe," Tristan said. "But I don't regret it." "Neither do I." That night, they didn't sleep much. They stayed in the library, talking quietly until the sun began to rise. About the past. About fear. About the future neither of them dared to imagine. They finally fell asleep on the couch, their hands still loosely intertwined. Soft whispering woke them. Bryn opened her eyes first. 3 small figures stood in front of them, arms crossed, very serious. "We knew it," Ellie said. Bryn sat up quickly, her face turning red. "Knew what?" "That Uncle Tristan likes Mom," Daisy said. "And Mom likes him back," Molly added. Tristan sat up slowly. "Do you have a problem with that?" he asked. The girls leaned together, whispering urgently. Then Ellie turned back. "We have rules." "What rules?" Tristan asked. "You can't leave," Daisy said. "Like our real dad did," Molly finished quietly. The room went still. Tristan looked at them carefully. Then he did something no one expected. He got down on one knee so he was eye level with them. "I promise," he said. "Promise how?" Ellie asked. "On my life." The girls looked at each other. Then all 3 rushed forward and hugged him. "Okay," Molly announced. "You can love our Mom." Bryn laughed through sudden tears. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel empty. But later that night, after the girls were asleep, Tristan was called into a private meeting. The room was quiet. Connor stood near the table. And on the screen in front of them was another photo. This one taken closer. Closer than before. The girls outside their school. And standing across the street. One of Tristan's own men. The room went completely silent. Connor stared at the screen. Tristan didn't move. The image was clear. Too clear. Across the street from the school, leaning against a parked car, talking on a phone, was Jude. One of his most trusted men. One of the people responsible for the girls' protection. Connor spoke first, his voice low. "That photo was taken yesterday." Tristan's eyes didn't leave the screen. "Where is he now?" "In the building." "Bring him." Minutes later, Jude walked into the room, calm, composed, like nothing was wrong. He stopped when he saw the screen. For a second, his expression didn't change. Then he understood. "You want to explain?" Connor asked. Jude exhaled slowly. "It's business." The word hung in the air. Tristan finally spoke. "You were watching them." "Yes." "For Moretti?" Jude met his eyes. "He pays more." Connor took a step forward. "You sold out children?" Jude didn't answer. He didn't have to. Tristan walked toward him. Every step was slow. Controlled. Deadly quiet. 4 years, Tristan said calmly. I trusted you. Jude swallowed. It's not personal. Tristan stopped right in front of him. That's the problem, he said softly. To me, it is. No one in the room moved. Jude understood. He lowered his eyes. I won't fight, he said. Tristan nodded once. Connor stepped forward and escorted him out. The door closed. Connor turned back. What about Moretti? Tristan looked at the screen again. They think the girls are my weakness. His voice dropped. Let's show them they're my reason. That night, security doubled. Routes changed. Vehicles rotated. And for the first time since the girls had arrived, Tristan didn't go to the office the next morning. He drove them to school himself. Ellie noticed first. You're coming inside? Today I am. Molly held his hand the whole way to the gate. Daisy looked up at him. You're really staying? Yes. Across the street, an empty car sat where the last photo had been taken. No one inside. No one watching. For now. The following days passed carefully. Quietly. Until the message came. Connor found him in the library. They want a meeting. Where? Warehouse on the south side. Tonight. Bryn was standing in the hallway when Tristan came to tell her. She listened without interrupting. You're going alone? She asked. No. You're going to handle it your way. Yes. She stepped closer. Her voice was calm. But you're coming back. Tristan looked at her. Yes. That night, the warehouse was dark except for one overhead light. Moretti stood near the center. Older. Thinner. But the same cold smile. You've gotten soft, Moretti said. Playing house. Tristan didn't respond. You know why I wanted your attention? Moretti continued. Because men like you don't fear bullets. He leaned forward slightly. But you fear losing something you love. Silence. Then Tristan spoke. You're leaving the city. Moretti laughed. You think you can force me? No, Tristan said. I think you've already lost. Connor stepped forward. Photos were placed on the table. Moretti's accounts. His routes. His remaining allies. All exposed. All compromised. We took everything, Connor said. While you were watching children. Moretti's smile faded. You wanted leverage, Tristan said quietly. You gave me time. The warehouse went silent. Finally, Moretti spoke again. This isn't over. Tristan stepped closer. It is. For a long moment, the two men stood face to face. Then Moretti turned and walked out. Not defeated, but finished. Some battles didn't end with violence. Some ended with nothing left to fight for. When Tristan came home that night, the house lights were still on. The girls had fallen asleep on the couch waiting. Bryn was sitting beside them. She stood when he walked in. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then she asked quietly, Is it over? Yes. She stepped closer. You didn't hurt him? No. Why? Tristan looked at the girls. Then back at her. Because I want them to grow up believing their father protects people, not destroys them. Bryn's eyes filled with tears. She wrapped her arms around him. The girls woke up a few minutes later. Did you win? Molly asked sleepily. Tristan knelt down. Yes. Ellie looked at him carefully. Then you're staying, right? I'm not going anywhere. Weeks passed. Then months. The house changed again. More laughter. More drawings. More life. One evening, while Bryn was making dinner and the girls were arguing about homework, Tristan walked into the kitchen and stopped. Bryn turned. He was on one knee, right there on the kitchen floor, in the middle of spilled juice and open cereal boxes. Ellie held a small velvet box. Daisy held a flower from the yard. And Molly held a piece of cardboard that said, in bright crayon, "Say yes, Mom." Bryn covered her mouth. "Tristan, you gave me my life back," he said quietly. "I don't deserve you, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying. Will you marry me?" Tears ran down her face. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder. "Yes." The girls cheered. And for the first time in years, Tristan laughed without holding anything back. Years later, the house was full. Not just with drawings. With memories. Birthdays. Graduations. First jobs. First heartbreaks. Family dinners that lasted too long. And one evening, long after the girls had grown, Tristan sat on the porch beside Bryn, watching the lights of the city. "Do you remember the first night?" she asked. "When they asked if I was a bad man?" She smiled. "They saved you." Tristan shook his head slowly. "No." He looked toward the house, where laughter still came through the open windows. "They didn't save me." He took her hand. "They gave me something worth becoming good for." The emotional truth of his life had become simple. Love didn't change who he was. It gave him a reason to change himself. Because in the end, money built the house. Power protected the walls. But $5.37, and 3 little girls who needed a father, built a family. And sometimes, the richest life doesn't come from what you own. It comes from who chooses to stay. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this. And tell me in the comments, which country or region are you watching from? Your stories matter too.